When the empress of a civilization that ran entirely on predictive algorithms asked if I was willing to be a variable, I said yes, without understanding. And 6 months later, I was learning that she had hired me to be chaos itself, because her perfectly optimized people had forgotten how to grow. Nathan Cole leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping a rhythm against the table's edge. He'd been at this interspecies conference for 3 days now, and nothing had gone as expected. The last thing he wanted was another dry presentation on trade regulations or diplomatic protocol. But today, something different awaited him, a thought experiment that would soon become reality. He glanced around the room filled with attendees from various species, their curious gazes sliding over to his direction once more before settling elsewhere. Nathan adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat, readying himself for a presentation far beyond what he'd prepared for back in Earth's academic halls. "Good afternoon," Nathan began formally, as slides flickered onto the screen behind him. "Today I want to talk about unpredictability within strategic game theory." The crowd responded with polite interest. Some even glanced at their wrist communicators, already checking if they could find a more engaging session elsewhere. But one individual remained wholly focused, a woman whose appearance was starkly alien against human norms, a figure draped in an elegance so severe it demanded attention. Her pale gray skin contrasted sharply with silver, geometric patterns etched onto her cheeks like intricate scars or badges of office, while calculating blue eyes scrutinized him meticulously. "Dr. Cole," she said softly once he paused for breath. He turned to face her fully, noting the lack of titles in her introduction, despite clearly being someone important. "You have a theory about unpredictability, offering strategic advantages." She studied him as if attempting to solve an equation through pure gaze alone. "Indeed," Nathan confirmed, nodding with professional precision. "In systems overly optimized for efficiency and predictability, chaos introduces growth potential." She leaned forward slightly over the chair's edge, her eyes narrowing ever so subtly, in fascination mixed with another emotion harder to identify amidst all that cool calculation, desperation perhaps. Then she rose abruptly from her seat. "I am Thessaly," she declared firmly. "Your theory suggests humans could offer significant insights into our models." Nathan blinked momentarily before regaining his composure and nodding respectfully. Humans were not the pinnacle of intelligence, but they thrived on unpredictability, trait rare among most other species Nathan had encountered here. Without further ado, Thessaly pressed directly, without any preamble or formalities, "Are you willing to be a variable?" The question hung in the air between them. His mind raced through possible interpretations before he realized there was only one honest answer. This woman intrigued him beyond rationality. Her desperation hinted at something far larger than academic curiosity. "Of course," Nathan replied with cautious optimism, though still wary of where this might lead. "But what does that entail?" Thessaly's eyes softened marginally for a fleeting second before firming again into business mode. "Details will follow in due time." And then she was gone as suddenly as arrived, leaving behind more questions than answers and an invitation to her homeworld within days. The Vel'Thane world was unlike anything Nathan had witnessed. Towering spires made of iridescent glass housing vast algorithmic centers where the civilization's every decision played out on digital scrolls. Every birth optimized for genetic perfection, careers assigned based on calculated probabilities rather than personal passion or ambition. Yet despite their brilliance, these people lived in a static society devoid of growth and evolution. No room was left unaccounted for, no variable untouched by predictive models until they met him. "You see it too?" Thessaly asked one evening as they walked through the twilight-lit cityscape together. "Your civilization optimized itself into stagnation." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "Without unpredictability and chaos, there's little room left to innovate or adapt." He echoed his earlier thoughts aloud, now with fuller understanding. Her eyes held a rare openness rarely seen amongst her people. Fascination mingled deeply within them as she approached closer. "I need you to break things." The declaration caught him off guard, but not entirely unpleasantly so. There was something exhilarating about being asked to shake up this orderly universe. With renewed determination burning in his eyes, Nathan stepped forward and extended his hand, human style. "I'm willing," he confirmed firmly. A small smile tugged at the corner of Thessaly's lips, for once rather than her usual mask-like stoicism, as she shook a first gesture outside their rigid protocol system that spoke volumes about potential shifts ahead. Together they forged a new path forward into uncharted territories beyond mere numbers and equations, where human unpredictability might just hold the key to saving an entire civilization from its own perfection. 6 months into his unexpected role as a variable for Vel'Thane's civilization, Nathan Cole had become acclimated to the rigid predictability that governed this alien society. His days were filled with meetings and discussions where he proposed ideas meant to introduce elements of unpredictability, intended not only to disrupt but also to foster growth. One day, during another strategy meeting, Nathan suggested implementing random assignment lotteries for some positions within their administrative hierarchy. The room fell silent as the suggestion sank in. Then outrage exploded like a sudden tempest. "How can we assign such crucial roles by chance?" an elder Vel'Thane scientist blurted out. Nathan calmly replied, tapping on his tablet screen to display projections showing how introducing random variables could lead to unexpected talents and perspectives being brought into light. After prolonged debate, he managed to secure a trial run for certain less critical positions. To everyone's astonishment, these lotteries unearthed hidden skills and potential in individuals who had been overlooked by the algorithms. Another day saw Nathan proposing game nights with imperfect information, strategic puzzles designed to challenge players' intuition over logic. At first, Vel'Thane participants were bewildered, then came confusion as they grappled with these new forms of entertainment. Slowly but surely, laughter began echoing through the halls where only data had once reigned supreme. In a particularly heated session about research partnerships, Nathan suggested blind selection processes to forge teams across different disciplines without regard for preconceived probabilities. The suggestion met initial resistance. "We cannot trust outcomes if our algorithms do not foresee them," someone argued vehemently. But Thessaly Vel'Thane listened intently, her calculating gaze softening with each passing moment of Nathan's passionate advocacy. He had come to understand the importance of unpredictability in driving innovation and creativity, an understanding that was beginning to influence his human colleagues as well. As weeks turned into months, the effects became undeniable. Breakthroughs emerged from partnerships never predicted by any probability matrix. The Vel'Thane people started experiencing genuine joy, a feeling long absent due to their relentless pursuit of perfection through data-driven decisions alone. Thessaly watched these changes unfold with growing fascination and concern. She saw how Nathan's presence disrupted her society in ways that could either lead to its renewal or bring it crashing down into chaos. With each new experiment, she found herself studying him more closely, his reactions, his strategies, even the way he interacted socially outside formal meetings. One evening, after a particularly successful variable introduction, a night filled with laughter and unexpected camaraderie, Thessaly pulled Nathan aside for a private discussion. They walked through the twilight-lit cityscape together, their footsteps echoing softly against polished stone pathways. "You see it too?" she asked quietly, as they paused under a glowing canopy of bioluminescent flora. "Our civilization optimized itself into stagnation." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "Without unpredictability and chaos," he echoed his earlier thoughts aloud with fuller understanding now, "there's little room left to innovate or adapt." Her eyes held an unusual openness rarely seen amongst her people. Fascination mingled deeply within them as she approached closer. "I need you to break things, Thessaly," he admitted frankly, a rare moment of vulnerability flickered across her stern features before retreating behind the mass, like stoicism typical for Vel'Thane leaders. The declaration caught Nathan off guard, but not unpleasantly so. There was something exhilarating about being asked to shake up this orderly universe in which he had become intricately entangled over these past months. With renewed determination burning within his eyes, Nathan stepped forward and extended his hand, human style. "I'm willing," he confirmed firmly. A small smile tugged at the corner of Thessaly's lips, for once rather than her usual mask, like stoicism, as she shook a first gesture outside their rigid protocol system that spoke volumes about potential shifts ahead. As days passed, Nathan noticed subtle changes in Thessaly's behavior around him. She found excuses to consult directly with him on matters beyond mere strategy sessions. Late-night discussions were followed by early morning probability analyses until they both started looking more tired than usual, yet inexplicably happier despite their exhaustion. One evening during a particularly grueling discussion, Nathan looked up from his tablet just as Thessaly was contemplating an unexpected outcome she had derived moments earlier due to one of Nathan's suggestions. She gestured vaguely before whispering softly, "I did not expect this." He mirrored her curiosity and surprise by looking back intently. "Expect what?" She struggled briefly with formulating her thoughts into words that aligned correctly within Vel'Thane cultural norms, yet also captured something far more personal than they had ever shared. Pausing for a moment to gather herself, she finally spoke in hushed tones. What you do?" Nathan set down the tablet gently on their meeting table and leaned forward slightly towards her prime calculator. Vex observed Nathan's influence on Vel'Thane society with growing concern. The human variable was not just spreading chaos, but also driving unpredictability at unprecedented levels. Thessaly, too, had become increasingly erratic in her making decisions that diverged from their calculated algorithms and threatened to destabilize the entire civilization. One morning, Vex approached Thessaly during a briefing on Vel'Thane's stability metrics. His demeanor was as rigidly controlled as ever, but there was an undercurrent of unease beneath his usual calm exterior. He presented her with data that detailed the alarming increase in civilizational instability since Nathan's arrival. "The algorithms show civilizational instability increasing 340, Vex stated coldly, laying out a series of charts and graphs on Thessaly's desk. Thessaly read through them carefully, her eyes narrowing as she processed each statistic. She knew this was not an academic exercise, it was a direct challenge to the Empress herself and the choices she had made. But there were also positive changes being recorded, innovation metrics shooting up by 500 since Nathan's arrival. "The algorithms also show innovation at historic highs," Thessaly countered, her voice firm but calm. "Adaptation metrics have never been higher." Vex leaned forward with a grim expression. "And what about your instability, Empress? Your decisions no longer match predicted patterns." Thessaly stiffened, aware that this was the heart of the matter. Vex's accusation hit close to home. She knew her own decision-making had deviated from their established norms in ways she couldn't entirely explain. "My decisions are my own," Thessaly said firmly, meeting his calculating gaze head-on. Vex pressed on, undeterred by her resolve. "Exactly. That is the problem." Thessaly felt a knot form in her stomach as Vex laid out more data. Nathan was scheduled for termination within 12 hours due to classified civilizational threat assessments. Thessaly had until midnight to comply with Prime Calculator's directive or face escalation to the Council. She dismissed him with curt words and spent the next few hours poring over every scrap of information related to Nathan's presence in Vel'Thane society, searching for a way out, a loophole, an argument, anything that might save them both. But no matter how she twisted her algorithms, there was no path forward without compromising either stability or Nathan's life. Finding him late at night working on his tablet in the archive, still analyzing data and devising new strategies, to challenge Vel'Thane. Normsh told him what Vex had said. "So I am too chaotic," he observed calmly when she finished explaining. His eyes held a mixture of determination and resignation, reflecting Thessaly's own feelings as she grappled with this impossible situation. "I will not let them terminate you," Thessaly stated firmly, her voice shaking slightly, but still resolute in its intent. Nathan looked at her steadily before reaching out to catch her hand. "What are our options?" She pulled back only briefly, running calculations, even as she did so a very path leading inevitably toward his death, or her removal from power, with no optimal solution anywhere within sight. It was frustrating and terrifying all at once. "If I stop calculating," Thessaly said slowly, almost to herself, "I do not know what I will choose." Nathan's grip on her hands tightened gently. "Maybe that is the point." His eyes were clear and steady as he looked back at her. Thess stared into his gaze. This human, this chaos, this variable who had changed everything including her. She made a decision, Thena, truly unpredictable one for once in her life, and took an action she never imagined would come so naturally. "I am going to save you," Thessaly said resolutely. "I do not know how yet." She leaned forward and kissed him tenderly, feeling the warmth of human emotion wash over her like a revelation. It was chaotic, but also liberating, a shift in understanding beyond any algorithmic construct she had ever encountered. "Because I want to," she added softly when they pulled apart. A smile spread across Nathan's face as he held onto her hands again firmly. "Now you are getting it." For the first time since his arrival, Thessaly felt hope rather than despair in this impossible situation, a new direction emerging out of chaos that was anything but predictable or planned. The chamber of the Vel'Thane Council was a place where silence could speak louder than words, and today it spoke volumes as Empress Thessaly stood to address her peers. The room's walls glowed with intricate patterns that shifted according to the fluctuating energy levels in the iris, stark visual representation of tension. Prime Calculator Vex stepped forward first, his posture rigid and unwavering. "Empress," he began without preamble, "the human variable must be eliminated." Thessaly felt a knot form deep within her chest, but pushed it down with steel resolve. She stood tall, meeting Vex's cold gaze unflinchingly, as she prepared to make her counter-proposal. "I have a counter-proposal," Thessaly declared firmly, her voice carrying through the room without hesitation. At once, she activated one of the chamber's display panels that stretched across an entire wall. The screen flickered to life with 6 months' worth of data, innovation metrics soaring past their highest recorded levels, adaptation scores showing unprecedented resilience and flexibility, growth rates climbing steadily upward despite previous stagnation. "The variable has improved every system he touched," Thessaly stated, her words dripping with authority as she looked directly at Vex. "Innovation is up 500. Adaptability metrics have reached unparalleled heights." She paused for emphasis, letting the numbers speak louder than any argument could ever convey. Vex's rigid composure began to waver slightly beneath Thessaly's unrelenting stare and the sheer weight of statistics. But he was not one easily swayed by mere evidence, had his own set of data that painted a different picture entirely. "He has also destabilized you," Vex countered grimly, fingers tightening on the arms of his chair. Thessaly nodded slowly in agreement before continuing. "Correct." Her eyes darted to Nathan standing at the edge of the chamber where he watched intently as she continued her presentation. She took a deep breath and began recounting how their civilization had reached this point, a tale far beyond simple numbers or calculated outcomes. "For 200 years, I made only optimal decisions," Thessaly said solemnly. "Predicted every step down to its most infinitesimal detail, calculated with unfailing accuracy." Her voice softened as she reflected on the irony of her own words, perfection leading to decay. "And for 200 years, our civilization slowly died," she continued, each word cutting through the silence like a blade. "Perfect choices had led them into stagnation, a paradox that eluded logical explanation, until now. She turned back towards Nathan, whose presence in this room was both unexpected and profoundly significant. Then a human asked me if unpredictability could be an advantage. Thessaly's gaze softened as she spoke of their initial conversation, of how his question had sparked something within her, a curiosity about the unknown, an interest in chaos rather than order. I decided to test it. She continued, for 200 years, I was perfect and empty, Thessaly admitted with a sigh that held more regret than sorrow. Perfect decisions devoid of passion or purpose. No growth could stem from such sterile logic. And then he made me laugh at unpredicted moments. Her eyes flickered back to Nathan's steady form on the fringes of her world, where his presence had stirred dormant emotions long since buried beneath layers of meticulous planning and control. Made me curious about incalculable things. Made me feel. Vex sputtered indignantly, the algorithms, but Thessaly cut him off with a sharp look. The algorithms did not predict this, she said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument or interruption. And that was precisely the point. She had reached beyond cold numbers and into something far more complex and beautiful than any algorithm could ever capture. She stood tall now, feeling every eye in the chamber upon them as they awaited what would come next from their empress, a woman whose decisions were no longer dictated by calculations alone, but driven instead by an unforeseen desire for evolution. Introducing a final variable, she declared resolutely, the Empress chooses chaos. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Thessaly's words had shaken foundations long solidified in stone and logic. She knew what came next was bound to shock even further. I am taking the human as my consort, she announced with conviction, her gaze meeting Nathan's across the chamber, where his eyes widened slightly at this new turn of events. Permanently introducing unpredictability into our leadership. Vex sputtered once more, but Thessaly silenced him again, without breaking stride or losing composure. Let the record show, she stated officially, turning back to face her peers fully and directly, addressing them with a finality that left little room for doubt or discussion. The Vel'Thane Empire has chosen to evolve as